Unexpected political furor has erupted after a string of public nominations of former President Donald J. Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize, moves that have been announced not by the Norwegian Nobel Committee, but by lawmakers and foreign officials eager to attach the weight of a historic accolade to a figure whose tenure and post-presidential career remain among the most polarizing in modern American politics. What began as individual declarations by sympathetic members of national parliaments and foreign governments has ripened into a broader debate about the nature of nominations, the meaning of peace in a turbulent era, and the role of symbolic honors in shaping legacies. Representative Darrell Issa. The mechanics of nomination are straightforward, but widely misunderstood. The Nobel statutes permit a defined set of nominators, including members of national assemblies and governments, certain international jurists and academics, and former laureates, to submit candidates. Those nominations, however, do not constitute endorsements by the Norwegian Nobel Committee. They are simply requests for the committee to consider a candidate when it evaluates the field. The committee itself safeguards much of the process behind a veil of confidentiality, releasing final decisions only when it selects a laureate. The distinction between nominators' public posturing and the committee's deliberative discretion is critical to understanding both the political theater and the limits of what a nomination can accomplish. Wikipedia. In recent months, a patchwork of nominations and public letters has placed Mr. Trump at the center of a conversation that spans Washington, Oslo, and capitals in between. A range of actors, from U.S. House members asserting that his actions on the world stage warrant recognition, to foreign heads of state and parliamentary delegations, have framed their submissions as responses to Trump's interventions in high-profile international crises, his administration's diplomatic overtures, and in some cases, his role in negotiating hostage releases or ceasefires. These public announcements are unusual only in their visibility. They amplify the political calculus of supporters who see an international prize as validation of a contested record. Representative Darrell Issa. To many observers, the flurry of nominations is as much about domestic narrative management as it is about international recognition. For political allies, the act of nominating a party leader or president is shorthand for reaffirming a worldview that strength and decisive action abroad can coexist with peacemaking, and that assertive U.S. policies, even those punctuated by force or coercion, can be framed as contributions to stability. For critics, the attempt to equate muscular foreign policy with peace risks redefining the term in ways that make the Nobel Prize a vehicle for partisan triumphalism. The debate touches on deeper questions about whether peace should be understood primarily as the absence of war, the resolution of specific conflicts, or the long-term building of structures and norms that prevent violence. These are not merely semantic differences. They are competing conceptions that shape who is deemed worthy of the world's most famous prize. The political payoff of a Nobel nomination, even if it does not yield an award, can be substantial. A nomination allows political figures to assert moral authority, bolster international alliances, and shape historical narratives. It also reveals an appetite among certain constituencies to see their leaders' foreign policy legacy reframed in heroic terms. Yet the optics cut both ways. Opponents point to unresolved controversies that cloud any claim to unambiguous peacemaking, policies that critics say exacerbated international tensions, the use of military assets in contentious operations, or rhetoric that strained traditional alliances. The public announcements of nominations therefore function as both praise and provocation, an effort to set the terms of history while inviting scrutiny. The Norwegian Nobel Committee's role is deliberately insulated from such partisan theater. Though nominations may be publicly announced by nominators, sometimes as a tactic to generate attention, the committee's evaluation is based on the statute's criteria, which emphasize contributions to fraternity between nations, reduction of standing armies, and the promotion of peace congresses and negotiations. Historically, the committee has sometimes rewarded visionary diplomacy and quiet brokered settlements. In other years, it has chosen to honor grassroots movements, human rights defenders, or institutions rather than high-profile state actors. This mixed track record means that while a high profile nomination can draw headlines, it neither guarantees nor meaningfully shortcuts the committee's solitary deliberations. Wikipedia International reactions to the newly public nominations have been mixed and at times sharply split along political lines. Allies in some capitals praised initiatives framed as pragmatic diplomacy, with statements emphasizing the need to reward actions that reduced immediate risk of broader conflagration in specific theaters of conflict. Other governments have demurred or minimized the U.S. role, arguing that regional or multilateral actors were the primary engines of any truce or de escalation. The divergence of perspectives underscores a key point. The attribution of credit for complex international outcomes is rarely uncontested, and awarding a prize that canonizes a single actor risks simplifying the web of actors and local forces that shape crisis outcomes. Time, legal scholars, and foreign policy experts have also weighed in, arguing that the spike in nominations is as much an exercise in legacy management as it is a genuine attempt to honor peacemaking. One line of analysis suggests that political leaders often pursue symbolic honors strategically as a means of institutionalizing a favorable interpretation of their actions. A Nobel Prize is not a legal shield, but it can be a reputational fortress. Laureates often gain a prolonged platform and the moral halo that accompanies global recognition. Conversely, critics warn that conflating forceful strategy with the moral aims of peace can dilute the prize's historic purpose, which was conceived with explicit reference to fraternity and the reduction of armed conflict. The tension between moral symbolism and realpolitik is, in many ways, the central drama of this moment. How the Norwegian Nobel Committee will respond is unpredictable. The committee has demonstrated a willingness to surprise the world, in some years honoring quiet diplomacy, in others elevating voices from social movements, and its choices are shaped by both contemporary politics and long-term judgments about historical significance. It is also the case that the committee has occasionally shunned the most politically prominent candidates when it judged that awarding them would be less about honoring a peace achievement than about endorsing a political movement. For a nominee whose record is heavily disputed, the committee must weigh the prize's credibility against the message it would send by recognizing a contentious figure. Analysts note that the committee is aware that its choices reverberate beyond Oslo, influencing global perceptions of legitimacy and moral authority. Wikipedia. Beyond the committee's calculus, there is a domestic angle that political strategists are watching closely. For an administration or a former president facing intense partisan polarization at home, the veneer of an international accolade could be deployed to shore up support among undecided voters, sway skeptical allies, or blunt criticism by reframing controversies as struggles in service of larger goals. The optics of a Nobel nomination are potent. Media campaigns, social media amplification, and speeches can all be orchestrated to convert an announcement into a narrative engine for an entire political era. That potential is precisely why opponents have been quick to challenge the legitimacy of public nominations that appear strategically timed to influence domestic politics rather than to present a sober assessment of contributions to peace. Misinformation and rumor have already complicated the public conversation. In an age of rapid online propagation, claims about secret actions by the Nobel Committee or purported removals of names from nominee lists can take on a life of their own. Fact checkers and major outlets have repeatedly reminded the public that nomination lists are not definitive endorsements and that some viral assertions about committee actions are false or misleading. The spread of such confusion points to a larger problem. When symbolic honors intersect with partisan storytelling, truth becomes an early casualty. Responsible reporting thus requires careful parsing of who nominated whom, on what grounds, and what the Nobel procedure actually entails. Yahoo! There are also international diplomatic consequences to consider. Allies whose policy priorities differ from those of the nominators may find themselves in awkward positions as domestic political actors press for international recognition that departs from established multilateral diplomacy. Conversely, countries that publicly support a nomination may be signaling a broader realignment or a desire to cultivate closer ties with the nominee's allies. In this respect, a nomination is a foreign policy statement as much as it is a domestic political act. The potential for misreading or miscalculation is real, particularly when nominations are leveraged in the heat of electoral cycles or geopolitical crises. Finally, the episode raises enduring questions about the purpose of high profile prizes in an era of intense political fragmentation. Should awards intended to celebrate universal humanistic values be subject to the same partisan contestation as everyday politics? Or is it inevitable that in a polarized world, symbolic honors will be enlisted as instruments in political campaigns? The answer will be shaped by what the Norwegian Nobel Committee chooses and by how the global public interprets that choice. Whatever the outcome, the current flurry of nominations has already done what many political actors hoped. It has forced a global conversation about peace, legacy, and the meaning of recognition in contemporary geopolitics. As the deliberations proceed behind the committee's closed doors, the larger battle over memory and meaning will continue in public forums, op-eds, and legislative hearings. For now, the nominations are a vivid reminder that in modern politics, symbolic gestures can carry outsized influence. They shape narratives, rally supporters, and provoke critics. Whether any single nomination ultimately converts into an award, the debate itself has become part of the contemporary historical record, an episode that will shape how future historians assess the period, its leaders, and the fragile, contested politics of peacemaking. Representative Darrell Issa. Sources include public announcements from members of Congress and foreign officials who have named the nominee, reporting from major news organizations, and the Nobel Foundation's statutes and historical practice regarding nominations and committee deliberations.